Hi everyone, Merry Christmas. Welcome to another episode of the Power series. Now, last week we looked at the basic template canvas, and this week what we're going to do is we're going to start to add some of that complex formula. We're going to look to bring in the people, the resources. We're going to look to bring in the accounts that we've got within the system, any bookings or projects that they might have related, and then we're going to be able to assign days to that person for that project on that account. Now, we're also going to look at how it would work if we had a day rate or a rate card. And ultimately, that will allow you then to decide whether your clients might need to be single line or flat rated on a day rate, or you can have some variable day rates assigned to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over. We're going to have a look at what's previously been done in the intro video, and then we're going to jump straight in to the complex formula piece. Here we have the pre-built, previously shown resourcing app. And in here, we have a list of people, and we've got the ability to collect those people. We've got a list of accounts and a list of projects that are assigned to those accounts. And we've got the ability to pick from a calendar which days we want to resource. Based on that, we can then say I want 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, or 5 days, in which we can do the AMs and the PMs, whether it's remote and on-site. There's also an element of rate cards in here, which we're going to build out because sometimes you might find that a client, say for Power 365, has an element of a day rate, or they might have a rate card assigned. So we can essentially look to utilize based on your current inside resourcing. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to our model driven, just to showcase that we've got some data in here. So we have our accounts, we've got Contoso and Power 365 loaded in. And within Contoso, we've got some rate cards. So in here, we've got an architect and a consultant with some nice day rates. We've also got Power 365 solutions, which are running on a day rate of £1 million. Outside of that, we've got a couple of projects loaded in. We've got Contoso have a return to work app loaded into the system, and Power 365 have an MS Teams deployment and application system. We've then got our list of users, which we can see here, and then we've got our resources that are available to us within the app, where we've got Alex, Dan, and myself. Now, moving that forward, we then have the app that we created last week, where we did the template. And as you saw a second ago, what we're going to do is we're now going to turn this into that, slowly but surely. Right, first thing we need to do. We need to add some data. Now I'm going to utilize the left-hand navigation. Much to my own dismay, I have actually started to like using it because I was an old Power App Designer user. I much preferred using the top toolbar, but now I have to admit I've changed. I do like the left-hand side. I'm going to add data, and I need to add a few different things. So the first thing we're going to bring in is resources. So we have a table in here called resources, which I'm going to bring in. I'm also going to need to bring in the accounts, which you had there, because that's going to allow us to pull the projects, which I also need to bring in the projects. And I think I'm probably going to need rate cards, so we'll bring rate cards in. And what else do we want on here? So I've got user, account, project, rate card. That'll do for now. Perfect. Now, as you saw from the previous video, I like to create my items here in the back so that I can copy and paste them. The user is going to be placed within a drop-down. So I'm going to copy that onto the front, and I'm going to paste that in. Now, what I'm going to do with this is I don't think I need that. I don't think I need that. Maybe I do need these. So we'll just leave them over here. And when we're working with drop-downs, I'm actually not going to do anything fancy on this one because, or maybe I will afterwards. But what I'm going to do is I'm essentially going to place this against resources, and I'm going to bring through the name, as you can see. Now, the resource list here is not the user list. These are connected to users. So if I click into me, you can see that it is owned by the user, for which hopefully we might dig into in the future for security purposes when we start to bring the resource table forward. But it is a lookup, and that lookup is into users. You might find, and it's something that we might maybe expand in the future, is that you also need this to go for contacts because you might have contractors working for you. At the moment, it is a lookup into user. So the scenario that we've got here is I want to bring through my list of users because at the moment we're only dealing with users, but like I said, in the future, it might well be contractors. And because of that potential switch scenario, I'm going to create a more local collection. Now that local collection, because it might work with users or contacts, I still need the data in the app to be the same. So I'm still going to need, or I always want to make sure I've got the name, the email address. Because we're going to be working with rate cards, I also want to make sure I've got the positions. But regardless of it being user or contact, it needs to fit the rest of the app. So the schema needs to be the same. So we're going to make it a local collection. So I'm going to collect the, I want the name. Now I like to denote the front of a collection with col. So any of my columns in a local collection, I'll put col. The reason for this is because if I was to put email and then I was to compare it with a Dataverse table where the schema name was email, they won't match and it won't allow you to do the right comparisons. It won't understand which field is coming from where. So if I'm patching collections into Dataverse and I put email because that's the collection column name, but it's going into email, it won't understand email as email. So I just like to name in convention my columns within a collection. But I want col name, I want col ID, just because why not? I want col email, I want col position, probably going to want ID, and I'm probably going to want the text because in the future I'm a bit lazy. It's easier to refer to rather than dot down. Now, again, as I just mentioned, the user contact thing is a scenario that could happen in the future. Because of that, if I'm patching into the user table, the patch needs to understand that it's the user record being patched into the user record. I can't cross-compare different things. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to pull the user details so that it understands when I'm putting it into the user table, or if I'm relating it to the user table, it knows it's come from the user table. So I'm going to look into users, and I'm going to look by system user ID. Now, if you've not seen Level Up before, then if I go over here and I look at myself as a person and I utilize Level Up and I go to all fields and I look for system user ID, system user ID is my GUID. So this is the GUID of me within this specific environment for my specific user record. Going back. So I'm going to look for where I'm going to cost, because system user ID is always going to be unique. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to utilize DD resource, which is what we've called this drop-down box. I'm going to utilize DD resource, and I'm going to look for the selected resource because it's a drop-down. The dots on here, I'm looking at the input, which is a drop-down. We've called it DD resource. When I utilize the dot, it then gives me access to all of the properties. One of the properties is selected. It's in alphabetical order here. One of the properties is selected. So that's the one that we've selected, which you can see is Tom Moore. And then I'm going to dot again. Now I've got access to all of the resource table columns because remember, the data source of this dropdown is the resource table. And in here, we need to dig further into the resource user column, because if we go back to our Dataverse, it's this column that we're looking at, which is the lookup. And from there, I'm going to look for system user ID. Now, what that's essentially saying is look into users where the system ID of the user is the same as whoever you've selected in here, their system ID. Now from that, I've then got access to all of the user fields because I can now close my lookup statement, I can dot, and I've now got access to all of the user fields. Perfect. And I want full name. So we'll just put full name. Then I'm going to copy and paste this statement. Don't have to rewrite it. ID, yeah, sure, we'll just, like you can see, I don't particularly need it, but I'm going to put it in anyway, just in case I ever want it. I want their email, so I'm going to have their primary email. This one, you could argue this one's not necessary. You could also argue these two aren't necessary. You could also argue you probably don't need the lookups, but I think it will make it easier in the future. So I'm then going to bring through the users, I need to put a comma there so it understands what's going on. I'm going to bring through the user's position. I'm going to bring the position ID of that in. So that's the position ID. So position dot the GUID. And then the last thing I'm going to bring through is the lookup into position and into name. Now, the reason a lookup, again, second reason a lookup is really helpful is because polymorphic lookups don't necessarily like being double dotted. Now, doing a lookup means that the level I'm looking at is this one, which means I can dot again rather than dotting twice and going from dot selected, dot resource, dot position, dot. I've got a lookup which puts me back to start. So I'm actually starting from user here rather than starting from resource. If I was starting from resource, I'd need to be going resource, user, position, field. Instead, I'm going user, field, user, position, field. So I'm losing a level. Anyway, that's superfluous, slightly verbose, apologies. And we're going to finish that collection. And hopefully, if I've not messed that up, we should get something from that. Let's just double check I've not done something wrong. Position text, position name, comma, comma, comma. What don't you like? Okay, it's because schoolboy error. I've not named it. Let's call it call user and comma. So it's now got a name. I forgot to put a name for the collection. I got excited. Anyway, so that worked first time, which is demo gods on my side. Let's pause that. And if I was to now click this button and submit, I've got the ability to look at my collections. And in my collections, I've now got all of that data that I wanted. So I'm stripping off all of the superfluous stuff, and I've got exactly what I need. Perfect. What I want to do here, I imagine, is probably look at that in a gallery, as we've got on the resource in one. So I'm going to go to insert. I'm going to put a vertical gallery in. I'm going to get rid of all of these because I don't need any of this stuff. I'm going to leave that in there just so I know where it is. I'm going to go to items. I'll copy this one of my labels, because remember it's branded, and I'll paste that in there, and then I can get rid of this one just so that's giving me what I need. Let's make it a little bit smaller. So I'll drag the label up there. I'll make the template a little bit thinner because we don't need it that thick. I'll grab the whole thing, make it a little bit smaller. Oh, that was the wrong item to grab. That's still the wrong item to grab. Coming out. What are you doing? It's because I've not collected it to any data yet. I'm going to collect it to, oh, it was just lagging. I'm going to connect it to call user, which is the collection we've just made. Automatically it pulls through a field for me. I don't really want the email, so I'm just going to put the name in there instead. So this item.name, which means that it's looking at the collection because the whole gallery is related to the data source of call user. Inside there, every item is now going to be this item.callName. So if I was to select somebody else in here and submit, I then get done. Amazing. However, what if I don't want somebody? I've collected them, but I don't want them. Let's make this a lot smaller. Let's make these a bit smaller. Let's make that a bit smaller. What I can then do is I can take an icon. Let's go for grey. So in my items, come back over, put an icon in there. Let's use from the icons the cancel badge. Let's make it a bit smaller, 40 by 40 perhaps. We'll titivate afterwards. And the icon will use the remove function. We'll use call user. And because we're already in the record, we can just do this item. That did delay there and give me an error, but I think my internet connection is just slow. Which means I don't want Dan anymore. I can get rid of Dan. He goes away from the collection. Just to double check, he's gone from the collection, which means I can then get rid of myself. I go, and if I want to start again, Alex submit, Tom submit, and I get my collection working. Perfect. Let's just move that up there. Let's move that up there. We'll do, this can be called collect. Let's just go back and make sure everything's named as we need. We'll do gal users. This will be ICO remove user. This can be label gal user title or name. And we'll bring that up a bit. I'm going to put a border on that just so I can see it. And we'll make it grey because I like grey. That's a bit too light. Let's make it a bit darker. Cool. Now we'll tidy all of that up afterwards. We'll make this, make this look a bit nicer. But the next thing I need to do is I need to bring through the accounts. So I'm going to copy my dropdown, paste another one in. We'll put that here. And this time I'm looking at accounts, and I don't want account number. I want account name. Perfect. Now, what I am going to do here is just to add a little bit of extra piece in there so that they remain alphabetical, although they should always be alphabetical anyway based on the sort. We're going to do a sort by columns where it's accounts, and I'm going to choose account. So you have to put these in text, and you only get a few of them, but I'm going to use account name rather than type it. It's called name. So that's my account. Perfect. And then based on the accounts, I want the project. So let's copy and paste this one again. We've got another one now. And instead of all of these, I want to filter. So I'm not going to choose it from the right-hand side. I'm going to filter my projects where the account, that might work to be honest, DD, I've not renamed, but let's call this DD account. Let's call this DD project so I don't get lost. I'm going to make this, DD account dot account, no, wrong, sorry, dot selected dot account. And then I'm going to bring through, now I want all of them. So this might mean I need to go down one more, which is dot account. And then that gives me it. So it just needed the GUID, that was all. It didn't understand what this was. So it's now giving me the GUID, and then there's a selected GUID, which means if I make this a bit bigger, in here I should only have one. And if I swap this to Power 365, I've got two. Amazing. The next thing is the dates. So let's bring a date field, put the date field in. So just to recap, based on formula that we've done so far, not an overly large amount. We've brought through a basic drop down of our resources with the name. We've got a gallery of that, which we're utilizing a collect function on a button. Collect function is really, really basic. We're looking into the user table just to make it easier for the data schema itself. We're bringing through name ID, email, position ID, and text because we're going to do some rate card stuff here. That's why these are in. We're then showing them, we're using a remove statement. So if we don't need the person in the gallery, then we can get rid. And then we've got some basic sort by column formula on here on an account drop down, which we could probably also put here if we wanted to, where we do sort by column and we utilize, I don't know, name if we wanted to. And that's now doing a filter based on the account chosen so we can select the right project. And then we've got a date box. Now with the date box, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another button. So I'm just going to copy and paste this one. And I'm going to get rid of all of this just for now, just put false. We're going to say 1. And I'm going to make it smaller. You can see where this is going. Now the idea here is when we're populating into the Dataverse table, we want to populate day by day so that it shows on a calendar with a booking, whether it's AM, PM, but it needs to go day by day. So we've got a reference day on the left-hand side. So this is where we're going to start. So maybe, the scenario is I want to book Tom Moore on this return to work app on the 25th of December, because I know he'll really enjoy working that. I would then press 1, which then means I can book it in. The other scenario might be that I'm going to book him in January on the Monday, and I want 5 days. So it's going to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And each of those individual entries we can then patch into Dataverse so that it's got them on a calendar day by day by day. Now to do that, we need to utilize another collection. We're going to set that we've done the var days as the number 1. And then I'm going to do a for, in fact, I'm not, just in case they want to swap between. I'm going to clear a collection that I'll make in a second. My internet's a bit laggy here. Call dates, but clear it out. That's the collection I'm going to make in a second. My internet keeps playing with me. Now, for all is going to be a loop through because we might have multiple people booking on. And that is going to go through the call users that we've made up here. So for everyone in call users that we've currently got selected, I'm going to collect call dates. And we're going to collect the date, the format afterwards, the user, because we need to know who it is. Let's put some, it's just me messing around here, but we'll leave as is. For purpose of, let's make this user email so I can use the email if I need to. Let's do a user ID. Let's also do a duration. We'll start with value. I probably won't need a text version of that. I'm just predicting potential future columns that we might use for reporting. And a location, because there was a drop down. Again, I don't know whether we'll need that. And then we also want rate. Now rate, we're going to come back to rate because rate's going to be a bit of a switch. I think that's everything we need at the moment. So date is going to be not DD, not date picker, that's going to be date. Date. Let's not overcomplicate. This is going to be date date. Email, because we're in a for all loop, can be this record dot call email. User ID can be this record dot. Did I bring the user ID in my collection? Just collect that. I think I did. Have a look. Cool. Collections. Yeah, I did. Call ID. So this can be user call ID. Duration value. So 450, and I just know that 450 is, that's going to be all day. The location will be default remote. And the call rate. Now, we've got a few different ways of doing this. And I think that if we were to perhaps, because if we look at the table in the accounts for Contoso we've got no day rate. Day rate's blank. Let's have a look at the logical name using level up. We've got P365 day rate, that's blank. Whereas the Power 365 Solutions has something in it. It also doesn't have anything in rate card. So we've potentially got two ways of doing this, where we could do a lookup, and if it's blank, then obviously it's going to use rate card. Or we could also do a lookup count rows, where if there's rows in this, then that means they're being used. To keep it easy, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up into accounts where the account equals dd account, no, wrong, selected account day rate. And I'm going to wrap that in if. We'll do if that is blank. We'll do if is not blank. So if that's not blank, then we'll take the day rate, because that to us will mean that we're using day rate. What's wrong with this? Well, that might, yeah, it doesn't need to dot twice, does it? It knows what that is. That means we're using the day rate. Otherwise, we will need to, I'll tidy this up formula-wise afterwards, but we'll need to look into rate cards. Yes, we will need to look into rate cards, where the account on the rate card equals DD account. See, that is going to be a dot account, because I'm on the rate card lookup and I'm looking at the GUID, is dot selected dot account, and the position dot GUID name. Let's do position, because I've got both in the call users, equals this record dot call position ID, I think I called it. Now the reason it's not showing me those fields is because I could close this off just to give myself a little bit of an easier. I close this one off first. Look up, yeah, close that dot rate, I think it's called. That's giving me that, and then I could close all of these off if I wanted to make my life easier. Too many. Collect call dates. Blah 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 blah. I need to close the if statement, and that closes the collection. That closes the thingy. we'll just speed this bit up so I can work out what's going on. So clear this for all that. So we're collecting call dates. It's me pluralizing call users when it's called user. I'll probably change the name of all that, to be honest. Let's bring that back in. My internet's being really slow. And let's tidy this up a bit. So we'll just space that down. We'll say if that isn't blank, tab it in, then the true value is we're going to look into that. We're going to get the day rate. Else we're going to look into this and we're going to get the rate. And then I'm going to close the if, which then gives me the rate. Internet's being really slow. Let's bring that back up. That's why I didn't tab. Right. So we then want to potentially, it doesn't like it. Just it's because I don't need this record. It's because I can just do. It would have worked on ID. Let's do ID still. Pause call position ID. That's not ID, is it? It's position. Perfect. Right. The other thing I want to do is I want to bring through a gallery of rate cards. So I'm just going to copy and paste gal users, and we'll put that here. And this is going to be looking at there's going to be a filter on rate cards where account equals dd account dot selected dot count. And we will then change this. This is now not going to be name, this is going to be name. So we've got those two on, and we don't need to remove them because there's no removal. I'll put this here, I'll titillate afterwards, and then we'll bring through the rate. Perfect. So if I now change that to Power 365, that's blank, which means we're also going to, so gal rate cards. This is label rate card name, label rate card rate, and we will utilize the visible. So the visible properties, you can get to them all within the advanced area. I like to use the drop down. You can also search. There is a visible property for everything that we do. You've got your heights, your widths, your X, your Ys. Visible always comes with all of the inputs. By default, it is true. And rather than write an if statement, we're just going to say where count rows, because it already understands true, false in the visible property. We're going to say count rows of self.allItems is greater than equal to 1. So basically, if it doesn't have anything, then it won't show. Whereas if I then swap that back to Contoso, we've then got what we need in there. Now, this is a more efficient way, essentially, of managing things. So you like to refer to its own piece rather than me doing a count rows lookup or filter rate cards. I could just look at myself because I'm already doing the filter. So I'm just utilizing the self property, dotting through. And again, on that dot, you'd have access to height, width, X, Y, Z. All items is a property of a gallery. And then that means I can say greater than or equals to 1. And because that's true or false by default as an output, then it will understand. Right. The next piece is the interesting piece. The next piece is flexible height galleries. So I'm going to look for gallery in my insert. I'm going to insert a flexible height gallery. And on this flexible height gallery, we can get rid of all of these bits because don't need. I'll leave label in. And I'm going to connect this gallery to the call user. As you can see, it's pulled through my email address. We'll change this to call name to make things easy. What doesn't it like? X and Y's, that's fine. We'll just move it so that it picks up by default. So we've got Tom Moore. We'll do the whole gallery. Height will be the same. No CD will hit off if not. And inside here, what we want to do is click this one and insert another gallery. So this is called nesting galleries. So we've got our gal user date. And in here then, we've got another gallery, which we're going to make our gal dates. And what we're going to do from this one, the same again. Let's get rid of all of this because we don't need, and don't need. And we'll make it a little bit smaller if we can get hold of it. If I can get it at all. Doesn't like me. And we're going to, once I've set the items, we're going to, there you go, internet's catching up. We're going to filter col dates where col user, let's do email, I could do ID, equals this item dot col email. My internet is not happy today. Gets rid of the errors slowly but surely. We've got another Y error there. Let's just put that to 0. Apologies, I've had to sort my internet. Middle of a video. Anyway, moving forward. And this has given us this. So we're now looking at the date. So let's just look at the date just to bring anything through so we can see it working. Put the date in. I'm fighting some internet, but we've now managed to get this to say this item.col date, which means if I now select this one, I then get my date in there. Now, that's fine. We've done 1. What we need to do, however, is we need to do 2, 3, 4, 5 so that we can do all of them. Now, I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make this, I'm going to fast forward this bit so you don't have to watch it. But the answer here, in all honesty, is very, very simple. I'm going to change this to do. We're going to set the bar days because we've got the formula. I'm going to set that to 2. And all I really need to do here is inside my for all, collect my call dates, copy, comma it, paste it. And on the date, we're going to do a date add where we add 1 date. So by pressing 2, we would then get 2. And we've got the date plus another one. Obviously, this won't be in a label. This will be in a date picker. Actually, it probably won't be in a date picker. So I'm going to quickly fast forward this so you don't have to watch. And there we go. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Doesn't look very pretty, but I can go 2, 3, 4, 5. Now the height of this we'll make flexible. So what I'm going to do for the height is I'm going to do, what is the row height there? We'll just do, height can be the count rows of self.all items times, so if it's got 1, it will do whatever. If it's got, so it's got 6, you can see in there at the moment, and we'll times it by, I don't know, 60. That's too much, 40, perfect. And if we've got 1, it'll only do me 1. If we've got 5, it'll do me all 5. So that means we've got some flexible height going on in there using a count row, so it knows how many's in its own gallery, and then we'll times it by the height of the individual template. Now, what would be nice here is if we do, I should have done this at the start before I copied and pasted, because now I'm going to have to copy it across. But what we'll do is we'll do on the fill, so we know how many days we're working with. I like the grey, so we'll do if, we'll do it almost like a little switch statement. So we'll do if var days equals self dot text. It's not going to be, it's going to be the value of self dot text. Then we'll go light green. Otherwise we'll stay grey. Now the reason I'm referring to this because means I can take it now rather than saying if bar days equals 1, I'd have to change that every time. So again, I'm referring to the self, which is the button, and I'm referring to the text property, which if we have a look at the text property is 1, but it's in text. Now when we're setting it as a variable, we're setting it as a number. So I'm setting it as a number, which means I have to wrap the fill in the value so it understands number versus number. I could have wrapped this in text. I also could have made it text, but I like it as is, so I'm going to wrap it in value. And that means I can now take it and I can go quicker over here. We can find fill somewhere, font fill, and then I can paste, and then I can go to 3, and because it keeps me in the same place, I can paste 4, paste 5, paste. You can see that's picked 5 up because we've got 5. If I was to select 4, we've now got 4 highlighted. 3, 2, 1. Right, let's put it to 1. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to put the patch in for this episode because I'm fighting the internet. But I am going to put a few more fields into the gallery just so we can see how it would work if you had the rate card versus a day rate. So let's, just as an example, copy paste, and we'll take the super buggy. I left that back in just so you could see what I'm fighting, and we'll take call rate. But that's pulled through 100. And if I was to, let's say, add Daniel Elkerton to the mix, and then press 1 day again, we would then see that my rate's been picked up here and Daniel Elkerton's rate's been picked up here, because if we copy and paste this in, and we drag that up here, and we make it right justified, and we bring in the position text, you can see that I've got consultant and he's got architect. So when we look at the two, it's choosing the rate card. Now, if I swap that over to Power 365, they've got a day rate, so no rate cards. Hopefully, when I press number 1, it then puts in the £1 million for both of us. So this means that with your clients, what you've got the ability to do now is you've got the ability to go in, and maybe in the future you need to say for Contoso, there's a new rate card, or you need to update the rate cards. That would automatically pull through. Likewise, if you then wanted to add day rate or rate card to another account, you could just blank this out, add your rate cards, and the app would start to resource perfectly for you. Now, I am going to stop here because the internet is fighting me. What we've done today as a recap then is we've brought through the users, we've got ourselves a user table, we've brought through the accounts, the projects, and we've also given ourselves the ability to resource up to 5 days. On that, we can then see what we're putting through. And next week, what we'll do is we'll get in the AM, PMs, the locations, and a patch statement. So we can finally then submit this all through to the resourcing bookable resource table. And then we can overlay a calendar so that users can start to access things as they need to. It then allows us to see, and we can start then providing charts on our booking profits, because we can start to do calculations, which you'll see in the patch statement. Because all of these users, Tom and Dan, and all of your users within the company will all come with a day, like a cost of business per day, which will obviously then minus from the rate based on AM, PM, half day, full days. And then you'll be able to have charts on your dashboard to show you the booking profits per person, the booking profits per client, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, will all come in the next episode. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you have an amazing Christmas. We'll speak to you soon. See you in the next episode.